My name is Lucille. I'm a second-year MDiv student, and I work in the alumni office with Karine Le and Pierre Canet, who are here with us today. And thanks for tuning in. So before we start, a few tips. Try to change your view to grid view so that you can see all the panelists. And please use the Q&A option to ask your questions, not the chat during the panel. Or at the end, you can ask directly to one panelist or ask a general question, and you can ask your questions in English or in French, obviously. And to give you a bit of background about Inspire Students, they're monthly thematic roundtables organized by the Alumni Office, and they're aimed at connecting current students and alumni of the Institute around shared interests and to share experiences. So this series is a collaboration with Career Services, which you know very well, namely Aline and Tiffany, who is here with us today and will be moderating the event. And they support you with your career needs. And also, we're doing this in collaboration with the Professional Development Committee team. So before we start with the questions and the panelists, I will briefly introduce each one of them. So our first panelist today is Ana Maria Angarita. She's she graduated from MIA in 2012, and she's the co-founder of Capacity Zurich, a non-profit association for persons with refugee and migrant background who would like to launch a business or a social cultural initiative in Switzerland. Capacity offers specialized and bilingual programs in the space of collaborative skill sharing. And before this project, Ana Maria has had over 10 years of experience in organizations such as the Union for International Cancer Control, the International Organization of Employers, and the Organization of American States. So welcome to Ana Maria. Our second panelist today is Charlotte Ducrot. So Charlotte Ducrot graduated from MIA in 2008, and she's an expert in Mass Challenge and a mentor at startup ASHG Senegal. And until recently, she was the Director of Strategic Partnerships and Community at the Joint European Disruptive Initiative. And after graduating in 2008, Charlotte worked for the World Economic Forum and Endeavor before joining Swiss Contact to set up the Swiss Entrepreneurship Program in Peru. So welcome, Charlotte.
And thank you. Hi, everyone.
And finally, we have Alessandra Rojas, who graduated from MDev in 2019, and she's currently the head of Tech for Impact at EPFL, an initiative hosted at the Vice Presidency for Innovation that aims to accelerate innovative and entrepreneurial technological solutions with the potential to achieve sustainable impact. Prior to her work at EPFL, Alessandra worked for the International Trade Center in Geneva, the German social venture capital Bond Venture, and as a consultant for social businesses in both Europe and Latin America. So welcome, Alessandra. Very happy to have the three of you here. And I will now leave the floor to Tiffany for the questions.
Thank you, Lucille. Thank you to all three panelists for being here. So I'll start with the first question, which is addressed to all of you. How did your master and your time as a graduate institute student help you get to where you are today? So maybe we could start with you, Ana Maria.
Yes. Well, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for the invitation. I just want to take a few seconds to congratulate Karine and the team for this fantastic initiative. I have to say that I am very excited to know that a new group of students have access to this kind of resource. I think that having a supporting community is always important, but I think that having one as a student, it can really make a difference. So congratulations. Yeah, so my time at the Institute has definitely played an important role in my career and in my journey. It has been a fantastic, excellent presentation card, and it has opened doors for me and has given me credibility. I think this was especially the case when I moved to Zurich, where I had no network. So it was fantastic to connect with alumni here in the city and get some leads or just a nice, interesting cup of tea or coffee. And also at the same time, through the MIA Master's Program, I was able to work with UNICEF in India and participate on the Community Knowledge on Children program for a few months. And for me, that was a life-changing experience, and it was certainly a dream come true. and at the same time, I gain a lot of professional experience. So for me, I am very proud and thankful for my time at the Institute.
Thank you, Ana Maria. So the same question goes for you, Charlotte. How did your master and your time as a graduate institute student help you get to where you are today?
Well, thank you again also for inviting me and being part of this this session. In my case, it really opened up my path because I studied law before and I did a master's in international law. And I knew I didn't want to practice law, and so I really wanted to open up. And so I did the master's in international affairs, which allowed me to first do a lot of different classes. And I also got the chance to join the Institute and work during my second year of master's in the communications department of the Institute. So that was the first experience for me to start doing something else than, law, basically, because all my internships before had been in like related to law. And I was able to, after the master's, at the end of the master's and right after, I was able to join the WTO in external affairs. So that was, and for sure, the job at the Institute helped me transition into that. And after that, I joined the World Economic Forum. And of course, the World Economic Forum knows the Institute very well. So they knew kind of what kind of candidate and potential employee I was. So I think that really helped as well. So definitely, I think working during the master's really also helped me start looking into what I would be doing next.
Thank you, Charlotte. And last but not least, Alessandra, what about you? How did your master and your time as a graduate institute student help you get to where you are today?
Thank you very much, Tiffany, and hello, everyone. Thank you, as all my co-panelists have said. For me, there's diverse ways. I think the first one, and super important one, it helped me define better what my interests were and what they were not, and recognize a bit better what my personal strengths were and where are fields also that I still needed to improve upon. I had studied before technology and management, so I was really coming from more the tech background, but I was really interested in development, but I had no idea how I could combine both. At that moment, I actually never thought about it. And only when I was studying at the Graduate Institute, I started seeing more concrete ways in which this could actually happen. I was able to explore other fields of interest, such as in my case, like mining, and a bit more of economics, and then understand really, okay, this is where I want to go. These topics I'm actually not that interested about, and then take a decision based on that, and recognize definitely that in my particular case, having such an interdisciplinary profile was really key and was really a good and a strength that I could have for the future, which is really what I do now most. I think it also helped me gain confidence, because when you are an outsider, or at least I felt quite like an outsider before coming to the Graduate Institute in the development sector, because I hadn't studied anything related to that. And you tend to idealize things or romanticize, like, oh, this is so far away from where I am and what am I doing. And coming to the Graduate Institute and studying these subjects and meeting professors and being so close to so many UN agencies and international organizations, you realize actually it's not so far away. It's much more attainable than what you think in your head, and people are also much more normal than what you thought in your head. So gaining confidence was a key aspect of realizing, hey, I'm here and I have certain skills and I can also be part of this, sector. And of course, I think, final thing, I think it brought me to Geneva and I now work in Lausanne. So I was living in another country before. So definitely that's an aspect.
Great. Thank you very much for your insight, Alessandra. I think, it speaks to a lot of the students' experience, because I give workshops to students, and they're always kind of feeling like they're intimidated by when they're networking with people who have more experience. And I think it's a journey to gain this confidence throughout their years here. So it's interesting that you pointed this out. So now moving on to the specific questions for each and one of you. So Ana Maria, you have, a diverse background. You're a research analyst at UNICEF. And then, you worked for the Union for International Cancer Control, among, other experiences that you've had. Have you always wanted to work in social entrepreneurship? And if you had, what made you so interested in this field?
Well, the straightforward question is no. But I have to say that I have always been concerned about having a positive impact in people's lives, especially vulnerable groups. And I think this comes mainly from my experience, in growing up in a country like Colombia during unstable and violent times. But at the same time, I have always been a resourceful person. But I think I really developed my entrepreneurial spirit when I lived in the United States, where my family and I sought asylum and lived there for over 10 years. So I think that during that time, I learned to think outside the box. And I learned to, well, together with my family, we joke about being a football team and passing the ball to each family member whenever they needed the most. So being there for that person whenever they needed the most. And together we started a few businesses, some worked, some didn't. But overall, it was a beautiful experience that allowed us to solve problems in creative ways and also have the freedom to do it, because many things that we didn't know how to do them, but we just went with it, basically. So I would say that I pretty much became an entrepreneur by necessity, and it taught me a lot about resilience, about having a positive impact. Having a positive attitude towards life, especially during difficult situations, and persistence. So I think that today I now enjoy combining my passion of helping others basically with an entrepreneurial approach. So yeah, I think that's, in a way, that has become now part of who I am and the way I think and I operate. And when I moved to Zurich, I found myself again in a situation where I needed to stand up for myself. And I'm glad I did it, because thanks to that, I was able to co-create something impactful and meaningful, which is Capacity.
Thank you, Ana Maria. So I have a question for you, Charlotte, which is a little bit different. So we see that you've worked a little bit across the globe, mainly in Latin America and in Europe. So have you noticed any differences in the outlook towards social entrepreneurship across the countries you've worked in?
Yes, for sure. So to give you a bit of background, so after my master's, I joined the World Economic Forum and I worked for a community of young global leaders. So they were basically leaders under the age of 40, coming from all stakeholders of society. And a lot of them, a fair amount of them were entrepreneurs, but they were also coming from the media sector, from the arts and culture, from the public sector. Some of them were ministers, for example. And it was really a passionating job, but after a few years, I was ready to move on to something else. And I really found myself a bit initially stuck, because I really loved that job, but I didn't know how I could replicate that job somewhere else. It was very specific to work for a community of leaders. And so I started reflecting on what I liked about that job, and realized that mainly it was because a lot of them were entrepreneurs or had an entrepreneurial spirit. And also they were all seeking to having an impact. And so when I left the World Economic Forum, my objective was to work for an organization supporting entrepreneurs, but social entrepreneurs. That was my main objective. And I went traveling across Latin America, where I grew up. And when I came across Endeavor, which is an American foundation supporting scale-ups, so startups that are in the growth stage, I realized that, I would definitely be happy to join such an organization, because their take was basically that they were supporting entrepreneurs that were starting a business in a context that was difficult. And so they were supporting them, and these entrepreneurs were creating jobs and formal jobs that otherwise wouldn't be created. So at the end of the day, this is a social impact, and even if Endeavor doesn't support social entrepreneurs, the work that they do does have a social impact. And so maybe something that I've learned that I can share today is really that, sometimes we have something in mind as for our career, we want to accomplish something specific and we look for the kind of label, but at the end of the day, like, it's really important to look further and because there are a lot of ways of achieving the same thing, but through different careers or sectors.
Thank you, Charlotte, for your insights. And for you, Alessandra, the question that I have is a little bit more generic. But I think it's of great interest also to the students. Is what do you think were the key factors that helped you get where you are today in your career?
Thank you. So there are definitely a couple of factors. I'm going to start first with building opportunities for myself or for yourself. I was actually recounting for this purpose the internships that I did, and I realized that all my most important internships were internships that didn't have an open position, that I just wrote someone an email with my CV and a cover letter that I made myself. And I said, hi, I'm really interested in what you're doing here. Is my profile. Do you have any open position? And this is actually how I got all these opportunities. It was never, I'm not saying that applying to open jobs is bad, but I'm saying sometimes you have to create opportunities yourself because there's not always going to be there. So I think that was a key point. And of course, you have to do your homework. So setting high standards for your work, it doesn't serve anything if you just send an email that it's super rude with a cover letter that is not reviewed. Like, that is not going to get you anywhere. Build the opportunities, but also do your homework and make sure that the quality is there for the things that you're trying to achieve. I think a second point is exposing yourself to new things and not counting everything only by credits while you're a student. I actively, during my bachelor and my master, was involved in an array of activities, being student associations, being clubs, trying to do things over the summer. And all of this, I wasn't always thinking, oh, is this going to get me 1 credit or 2 credits? And what is the grade? Because these are kind of experiences in life that are actually going to connect you to other people, that are going to help you develop other skills, that are going to give you other type of responsibilities. And it's also quite fun. You don't always get that time when you're already working full time. I would really recommend everyone to seize these opportunities and not only measure your kind of success during your master or your bachelor because of the number of credits that you're doing. Really take this opportunity, because there is where you're going to learn kind of other type of responsibility. You're going to be exposed to other moments that are really going to help you then when you're actually working. I mean, team skills, speaking, organization, leadership, these are all things that came very strongly from the extracurricular activities that I did. And I think the last point, and I think it relates to what you commented before, Tiffany, it's not falling into the anxiety trap while you're studying. I think during the master, it can be quite intense, right? Like, you're doing coursework, and then it's where are you going to do your summer internship, and after is your thesis, and after is where are you going to work, and there's these big conversations that everybody's having all the time among students, and it's really easy to then feel anxious about it, because we are all kind of like, where are you going and what are you doing? And you kind of need to, at least I personally, I took a step back and I just didn't get myself involved in this conversation a lot, and just kind of like made a safe space for myself, and then really disconnect between the opportunities and what I wanted to do. And this allowed me to have even more a cold mind and realize, okay, if I don't get something, it's not so personal. I need to have a plan A, plan B, plan C, and really go super systematically about it. And then I felt like much more relaxed on things. I mean, it was not the end of the world if I wouldn't have found a connection in Geneva. There's so many opportunities in the world, and really like not falling into the anxiety trap. I think it's super, super important. Yeah, those things.
Thank you, Alessandra. I was just curious, can everybody hear me? Because I'm having a little trouble with my internet, so I'm just curious as to that. Hello?
Yeah, we can all hear you. Yeah.
Okay, great. I'll just keep going then, even if everything is freezing. So thank you, Alessandra, for your input. I think, definitely the pressure is getting to a lot of students here. I think they all feel like they have to get an internship. They feel like, they have to cover kind of all grounds and succeed at everything, academically be perfect, and also have the greatest opportunities at hand. But I think, what you say is very valuable to the students. Now going back to you, Ana Maria, as a social entrepreneur, there's pressure to always kind of add value to the work that you're doing. And has this ever put negative pressure on you or the work you do, or has it always been kind of a factor of motivation?
Thank you. Yes, definitely it has put some it has affected me at times, of course. And because basically in capacity we work at the intersection of entrepreneurship / innovation and migration. And so we are always looking for new opportunities that we can offer to entrepreneurs. And at the same time, we're striving to innovate in the mentoring and training programs. And then at the same time, we are also looking for new ways to engage and work with the public and private sectors, which play a very important role in our work of supporting the talent of refugee and migrant entrepreneurs, as well as sponsoring the work of our startup. So I would say that the negative pressure that I sometimes have experienced comes, I would say, from the limitations of being a nonprofit. So basically, we have found ourselves not being able to implement or develop a program or an initiative the way we wanted to because of low funding or even capacity. But in our experience, we have incorporated volunteering as part of our business model, basically. And so we've been lucky to work with a large amount of people who care and support our cause. And we've been able to achieve so much over the last 6 years thanks to their support. So they in a way help us to counteract basically all the pressure that we might be experiencing. But for me, what has helped me is to remind myself, for whom I do what I do, and also to remind myself that I've been in the shoes of refugees and migrants. And I also try to think of those stories of success of people that I call friends, and that I know they have been impacted by my work. I think that's quite important. But at the same time, I think in a more pragmatic, more pragmatic approach, I would say that one of the things we've done whenever we, the team, find ourselves in that situation is to also revisit the strategy, revisit revisit the priorities that we have set for ourselves. I think that has helped a lot. And also to make sure that we have consensus within the team so that we can maintain harmony and good relationships. Something else that I think I've tried to remind myself also is what entrepreneurship is all about. And entrepreneurship is all about pivoting, error and trial and error, experimentation, right? So it requires some practice, for one to get more comfortable with that. But I think that if you know exactly what you want to achieve, it is easier to maintain the commitment and the motivation of everybody involved, basically.
Thank you, Ana Maria. Yeah, that's definitely inspiring. Then for Charlotte, the next question would be how, you're an expert in Mass Challenge and a mentor at startup at St. Gallen. So how do you recognize innovation in, entrepreneurs or in businesses? And what do you think are factors that are common between all successful innovators?
Well, that's a very good question and a bit difficult one. And I'll try to provide I hope, an okay answer. But basically, I think pretty much anyone can innovate. And it's not only about, like building the next rocket ship to go to the moon or to go to Mars or somewhere else. There is basically, I mean, innovation first can come from different places. It can come from, you know, like building a new product or a new service, but it also something that sometimes we overlook is it really can come, and oftentimes, from just a business model. And to give you an example that maybe everyone can relate to, I'm pretty sure everyone knows about Netflix. But maybe not all of the students were born when Netflix actually started. And they started as, you know, back in the 90s, some of us would go and rent a videotape, you know, in a store. And Netflix started by trying to change this model and innovate in that kind of service. And they would send you, so you sign up for Netflix, you would ask them like a certain number of videos, and they would send them to you, and then you would ask, and then you would put them in the mail, and then they would send the next one, so you wouldn't have to go out of your place to go and rent a video. So they started, you know, really innovating in the business model, and it wasn't like you weren't paying the video by the video or videotape, but you were paying by a subscription, and every month you signed up for 1 or 3 or 5 videos that you would get at home. And then obviously then they continue innovating and adapting to like the new model that is today about, you know, streaming online. So I think that's really an important part of innovation in businesses, is like trying to innovate at the business model level. And then I think what's important also to keep in mind is that sometimes innovation comes from like improving something. And it's just, it seems like very small, but it can make a big difference. And to give you an example again, I think we've all seen during the pandemic, a lot of us were using Skype before. Some of us were already using Zoom, but it really took off because, you know, to do a Skype call, you needed the person to be in your contacts. And with Zoom, it was just easy, it was just a link and everyone used it. So it's like small things, but that can make a big difference. And I think that's what's interesting about innovation, is that sometimes with the word innovation, we feel it's something like huge and something very disruptive, but sometimes it's just a little bit different, but it will have a big impact. And I think something that also is very interesting is when we try to replicate, some entrepreneurs try to replicate something in a new market. So they've seen a business or a social business in one market and they try to bring it to another market. That might be the case actually for Ana Maria, I'm not sure. With capacity, but sometimes, you know, you've seen something and you realize that it's not in your market where you live, and you feel like, you know, it could really add value, and then you try. And I think that's also, we shouldn't undermine that kind of replication, because adapting to a new market is really adapting to a new reality, a new context, and it's also challenging, and it's, you know, it's not just like, let's do it and like it's been done, we can do it. Like it really has to be replicated. And to give you an example in this as well, when I moved to Peru, a few months later, Uber started to operate in Peru, and they had to change something a bit radically, but they basically had to open the payment to make them by cash, because a lot of people in Peru don't have a credit card, and they realized like if they want to like be successful in Peru, they have to like allow this possibility of paying by cash. So again, this is not major innovation at all, but it is like, I think that's like, to answer your question, it's what is interesting is to look like, not think that innovation had to be something like really disruptive, but it's really like something that will make a difference and allow the business to actually succeed. And another thing that I'd like to add is the importance of, once entrepreneurs like start innovating, is also to keep innovating, because the world is changing really, really fast. And we've seen some entrepreneurs like, you know, creating something really disruptive, but then, you know, they don't necessarily like keep up with what's coming up. And that's when, you know, they kind of, sometimes they get just pushed out of the market. So yeah, basically it's a question of really keep on like thinking outside the box. And also something to keep in mind is that innovation can come from anywhere in the world, but also anywhere in the company. Sometimes it really can come from, you know, people who are not in the leadership team or the management team, but some people who are seeing the business day to day, dealing with the clients, for example, and then can really add something and improve something. So it's another thing I think that's interesting about innovation.
Thank you, Charlotte. I think it's really interesting. You have great insight on this, because it's true that sometimes, talking about entrepreneurship can seem a little bit intimidating when we're talking about innovation as well. It always seems like it's something huge, but it's true that it can be something, small and yet smart and accessible that can make a huge difference. So thank you for your answer. And now moving on to the last question before we move on to the Q&A. For Alessandra, what are the key aspects to keep in mind when designing entrepreneurial solutions, according to you?
Thank you. I'm gonna name, there's many, but I'm gonna name 3 basic ones. First one is think or tackle an existing and relevant problem. I think this is someone we need to highlight even more, and we try to do it all the time. We start from a problem and think of trying to find as much information as we can from this problem and from the users that have this problem. So maybe you've heard of the phrase to fall in love with the problem and not the solution. So we need to focus all our strength in really understanding this problem and who has this problem, and really trying to define, is this a problem worth solving? So an existing problem and that is relevant to solve, that is going to be your starting point for anything that you do when you're designing, for social innovation. The second point is thinking interconnected systems. This is crucial if we want to design solutions that are actually creating positive systemic change. So, a solution or a problem is not viewed in its kind of in a closed cage, but it's interconnected. It's connected to a system. There are underlying structures that are related to this. You can look at different models that talk about this. The most popular one, I think, is the iceberg model, and how problems are interconnected, and how looking at these underlying structures is super important. Think always things in context, right? You have a chair in a room in a house in a city, and city in a planet. And this is not necessarily to overwhelm you. So it's not thought, because when you're creating solutions, you also want to, focus on the minimal and start building from that. But this is kind of to give context to the activities that you're doing, and realizing not because you're doing one good thing here, it's always going to be replicated on the longer term. So that is going to be point number 2. And the third one is think of impact holistically. And this I want to highlight, thinking of the positive and the negative impact of things, and the internal and external impact of things. So measuring impact at the end, it means we measure the effect that our project or solution has on people and the planet. Very important is to do an really honest analysis of all the activities that we do. And we might, especially being in the development sector, maybe you're working for the UN or you're doing a research and you feel like you have great intentions, right? And you might not be thinking, what are all those negative things that my actions are creating? And we need to be very honest on this, because
On a été coupé d'Alexandra. Donc, ça n'a pas l'air que sa vidéo reprenne. Tiffany, est-ce que tu as terminé avec les questions? Ah.
yes,
Yes.
you lost me. I'm back.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. I mean, I think I was in any case almost done. So thinking impact holistically, think of a relevant existing problem, think on interconnected systems, and impact holistically. Those are going to be the key aspects for starting and throughout the journey, right? This never ends.
Thank you, Alessandra. Thank you very much. I think for all our aspiring entrepreneurs out there, it's very practical advice. So that's great. So this ends the first part of the session, and now we're going to be moving on to the Q&A part. Thank you very much.
I'm going to put all the attendees as panelists now, so we can all see each other and ask the question. So if you want to turn on your cameras, you're welcome to. If you want to ask a question, it's nicer to see each other's faces.
I actually can start with one question to all of you. So how do you promote innovation within, I would say, relatively rigid, even bureaucratic organizations? So like the UN, for instance, and especially it makes sense and it seems easier to promote innovation when you're in a position of power, a project leader or something like this. But how do you do that, especially for us when we're going to go within the job market? We're going to have those not senior positions. How do you keep pushing for this?
I can go or try to. It's a very good question, Pierre. And I don't think I have the perfect answer, but I would say I think it's, and I've had the experience, so just to give you a bit of context, I ran a program in Peru for 5 years, supporting startup ecosystems, the development of startup ecosystems. And it was a global program with Swiss funds that was also taking place in other emerging markets. And our funder was SECO, so the Swiss Development Cooperation Agency. And it was the first time they had a bit of an innovative project. So the challenge for us is that we were working with incubators, startup incubators, accelerators, entrepreneurs, and we really wanted to adapt our services towards them. So, you know, reflecting on Alessandra's point, like we were really looking at our clients, so the incubators who were supporting entrepreneurs, and we're trying to add value to them. And to do that, we had to like remain very agile, and we couldn't plan a long time in advance. Whereas development cooperation projects, typically they require like a 4-year plan and then like a 1-year plan with all the activities planned ahead. And we had to explain to our funder that it wasn't going to happen with us, because if we were getting into that kind of planning, then we would get into like a certain mode and we wouldn't be able to do our job correctly. And so I think what it took us was a lot of conversation, explaining, showing like the end result and how like it was important for us to remain agile and to be able to just like plan a couple months in advance, but always like be able to like change our plans according to our clients. So yeah, I think a lot of empathy with people who are, you know, who are rejecting change and innovation, and try to like show them what the impact could be if you were testing, at least like also like I think showing them by testing a little bit can help change things, but it's not at all easy.
Mm-hmm. I can go next.
Okay.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. It's fine. Okay. Thank you, Pia, for the question. So, I think we were talking about before, Charlotte, I think was talking, what is innovation and what does that even mean? And it's just a big word, right? Like, how am I going to innovate if I'm an intern? Well, there's actually 1,000 ways that you can do it. Innovation doesn't always mean you have to invent the next thing. You know, you're an intern. Maybe you realize at your UN agency that they're using a system that doesn't work, or they're, you know, printing a lot of paper, or they're doing these kind of things. And what you can do is you can propose different ways of doing it. In my internship, it was, why don't we use SharePoint to have the different people that we need to register do it, you know, in our own server, instead of doing kind of like outsider type of thing. It was like a super small thing, but it really helped my team in that moment to kind of think, like, to use a tool that we could replicate across the entire agency. So you're just looking at the needs within, you know, your small team, and you're thinking of how can I improve this? And that, to a certain extent, is going to already push you in this kind of innovation type of spirit, because it's not going to be like a huge innovation, but you can do incremental and improvements and things that you see outside. I don't know, you saw how Airtable is used. Why don't we use Airtable at the UN? I mean, I'm just giving whatever example, but like, you don't need to be a huge boss and have all the power in the world to be able to bring these changes. And through these changes is how big organizations also start innovating. You know, you start realizing the power of implementing these type of things. There's a second point, however, that I'm going to highlight, that is a lot of times you just need to do it. You can try to get the buy-in from everyone. It's not always going to happen, especially in very hierarchical structures. I used to work at the UN, and I work at EPFL, which is a bureaucratic monster as well. If every time I want to do something, I need to get the approval of everyone, I would never be able to do my work. Actually, a bunch of the stuff that we do is that we think, hey, this could be a good idea. Let's try it out. Let's build a pilot around it. And it's literally just me writing a concept note and talking to maybe 2 colleagues and realizing, how can we make this happen? What is the minimum things that we need to have in place to make this happen? And after, once we have something that has a bit more meat, we can then try to get more buy-in and, get to expand it on it, because a lot of time people actually don't like change. So you need to kind of get those first proofs. So being kind of at that entry level, it doesn't impede you. Maybe it will impede you to have things implemented at a larger scale, but it doesn't impede you to start doing those proposals, to start thinking, how are ways that I can improve my work and the work of others and the impact that I'm creating? And then really start just doing it. I mean, there's nothing stopping you from actually doing a proposal and saying to your boss or to your superior, hey, I've been thinking of this, what do you think? At least this is how I've always done it. And there's times it doesn't work, but a lot of times it actually does. And when you're realizing you're creating new things and you're innovating.
And to summarize Alessandra's point, there's a saying, don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness. So if you mess up, then just ask for forgiveness, but you've tried at least.
From my perspective, I would say that being an entrepreneur, well, the beauty of being an entrepreneur is that there is no bureaucracy. So that already really kind of like cuts a big chunk, like a layer of the decision-making process. However, since we depend on the funding of the private sector mainly to run our activities, we need to make sure that whoever we want to have on board is fully on board. So as Charlotte and Alessandra were saying, people really need to be able, in order to have their attention, they need to test it. So they need to be part of the process, and that way they will become more receptive. In our case, working with the private sector, the way we have engaged them in innovation activities and just the overall process of the mentoring and training programs is by crafting an experience that is unique to them. And the way it looks like in our context is that they get to work for a specific period of time with a person with refugee or migrant background and help that person develop the project, whatever idea they're working on. So I think that is, in our context, that would be one part to ensure that a person can continue to think outside the box by prototyping, sharing the ideas, brainstorming up with people. But on a different level, in our case, as an organization, we've been able to engage in the conversation of refugee and migrant entrepreneurship and innovation with organizations like UNCTAD or with OECD. And we have been invited to participate, talk about our experience, because what I was pleasantly surprised to see that organizations like UN agencies or banks or insurance companies, they are now more receptive and more interested also to learn about the grassroots experience of local NGOs like us. So I think that it requires, of course, a lot of effort on different areas that go not only within our space of entrepreneurship, but also you need some also engagement at the political level, right? To make sure that the conversation gets going and that they actually take into account the needs of, in our case, of refugees and migrants.
Thank you.
Actually, I have a question as well. But it's more an observation and something that I want your opinion on rather than a question. So there was this OECD paper that I found about a gender gap in different sectors. and it was explaining that the gender gap is much smaller in social entrepreneurship than it is in normal entrepreneurship. And on the one hand, I do think it's great because it suggests that social entrepreneurship could be a powerful tool to increase female entrepreneurship and participation of female in entrepreneurship. But also, I also have that feeling that it can also constrain women in this social side of business and social side of entrepreneurship, if that makes sense. So I'm just wondering, what's your opinion on this? I know it's not very much related to what we were saying before, but you're three women working in social entrepreneurship, so I do think it would be interesting to have your views on this.
Maybe I can share some initial thoughts, but I would say that, I mean, in capacity, we are mostly women. So 95% of us are women. And I said that with pride. However, it's not that we decided to be an only women organization. It's just that it is very challenging because of maybe the opportunities or the competitive salaries. It's very challenging. We've seen that to engage male entrepreneurs. We do have volunteers, but that remains a challenge. So I absolutely agree with you. I see your point. While again, I feel proud to be part of a mostly women organization, it is still a challenge. And until the competitive salaries remain, it is likely to not change, from my experience.
Charlotte, you wanted to say
Charlotte,
something, or Alessandra?
Yeah, I was trying to think. I think your point is totally valid. I have seen, though, a lot of social businesses started by male as well in Peru and Colombia. So I wonder if it might be also something rich, like I wonder if the study was global or.
It was an OECD working paper. So
yeah, of course.
it
But
was,
it was focusing on the OECD countries.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't have a strong, opinion on this. I think I like the point of Ana Maria, like you said, like you didn't design capacity to be mainly led by women. I think what's important also is to keep diversity in general. And I think as entrepreneurs, it's super important to have that in mind when they build their teams and their boards, and like to always have this topic in mind, because I find it like key to innovate, to be complementary to all the good reasons why to be diverse. But I think it's something super important.
Yeah, I don't want to add too much. Actually, I see much more men entrepreneurs than I see women entrepreneurs. I think overall. I mean, I'm also at a technical university, so I see more men in any ways than women overall. But at least in Switzerland, there is more compared to other sectors, but it's still less than men. I read this statistic once that there is more likelihood for women to be solo entrepreneurs than men to be solo entrepreneurs. So men working in teams versus women working alone. And I think that's quite interesting. Maybe that's something that somebody wants to research about. Would be happy to know more. But yeah, I mean.
Thank you.
Well,
hi everyone. Oh,
yeah.
Sorry.
Who wants to ask a question? Because I'm supposed to ask the questions which are online, but nothing is written. And please open your cameras.
Yeah, sorry, my Wi-Fi.
Aloise, please go ahead. It's nice to see you.
But thank you so much for this discussion. I just had a question that's a little bit self-centered because I'm going to be graduating soon in next semester, and I was just wondering how your how you transferred your skills from academia to the more practical and entrepreneurship field, and how, yeah, if you already had an idea once you graduated about which direction you wanted to go to, and how yeah, how was that transfer of skills in your respective experiences? Thank you.
I can share some ideas based on the experience in capacity. What we've seen is that when we decide to work with people with your kind of profile, they add so much value to the work that we do, because you are usually the candidate or the team member who makes sure, or like make sure that whatever we are doing, it is still relevant. So, for example, in our case, we started our work by offering entrepreneurship programs for refugees and migrants. But then throughout the years, we started to conduct surveys to the growing number of alumni. And through those surveys, we realized that their needs were changing, and that some of them, yes, they wanted to continue with their projects and really embrace being an entrepreneur, but in other cases they realized that entrepreneurship was no longer for them, that what they needed was a job. And in those cases, well, we started to add the numbers, and it was a lot of them. And so what we did, thanks to that informed study, if you will, we developed a new program that it is now focusing on labor market integration. And so we have a social policy expert within the team, and what she's done is really a lot of research in this area, especially in Europe and Switzerland, of course. And her key findings really help us inform and develop new programs. So I think profiles like yours are very relevant, and at the same time, it can help with to work in the area of monitoring and evaluation. You know, also trying to think, you know, how can we really track the success or not of whatever we're doing. So I think there's space in entrepreneurship for someone like you, if you're interested in social entrepreneurship. But yeah, we can talk more if you like.
Mm-hmm. Hi, I can go next. Hi, Luisa. Thank you for your question. There are different ways in which you can go, right? You create your own startup. You join something as we here all do, right? Your mass channel. I mean, you're part of a team that does incubator or accelerator programs, or you work in something like Ana Maria just mentioned, or even you join a team, so an existing startup, and you join that team and work for a startup. So you have different options. And what I recommend you to do is to actually start meeting people. So I would try to find those events that Impact Hub organizes, that our accelerators programs maybe organize, and try to realize what is the type of work that they do. Start meeting people, asking them, hey, what do you actually do when you're working for a startup? For you to get a sense, where do you see yourself more, or where do you find it more attractive to start trying? Because the reality is you might start working for a startup and you realize actually that's not so it, and then you go to capacity and you realize, oh, that's actually it, or vice versa, and you won't know until you do it. So I wouldn't worry too much of like, oh, how do I transfer skill, what it has to be. It's not going to be a perfect fit yet. You are way too young. I mean, you're just starting. The idea is that it's supposed to be a kind of a journey, and entrepreneurship is a journey. So I would look, okay, these are the options, kind of. In Switzerland, there's a stronger and stronger ecosystem, so you can already find certain actors, and there's like lists nowadays that you can like browse through. And I would start going to events, talking to people, understanding what type of roles are they looking for, and then saying, hey, this role sounds like interesting, I'm going to apply. And then through those interviews, you're also going to get a sense if this is for you or not, because a lot of times what happens is on paper, it looks nice or it doesn't. And then when you get to that interview, you realize, it's a bit different than what I thought. And how you transfer your skills, I mean, you just go and do it. Your skills will come with you. You don't really have to do anything else, but just go in and bring in your skills, and they're going to be transferable.
One last thing, if I may, just to build on what Alessandra was saying, is that if you don't want to create something, from scratch, but you want to connect with these kind of topics. Also, I mean, the universities right now, they are all developing, and they're developing teams, departments on entrepreneurship and innovation. So there's a lot of opportunities there as well for you to consider.
Yep, I absolutely agree with what both Ana Maria and Alessandra said. I also relate a lot to what you said, because I didn't know until I had my first professional experience what I like to do. And also I would add also, like, try to reflect on your past experiences, like internships and just general like life experiences of what you like to do. Because I think when we graduate from the Graduate Institute, we have a very somehow a quite academic background, and a lot of what we've done at the masters and during our internships, at least in my internships, it was a lot of research and reports. And for me, I never really clicked with that. And it really took me like professional experiences to say, oh, well, what I really like is like the contact with people, try to understand their needs, try to serve them. And so I think like trying to reflect on what like activities that you like to do on a day-to-day basis and that gives you energy is something super important to like try to point at, that type of job that you might see. And Alessandra was saying very well, like, and try, and you try, and if you don't like it, then it's okay. There are a lot of different other jobs. You just have to like try to understand what makes you tick and what really motivates you and gives you energy in your day-to-day job.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think there's this one exercise that you can do if you are not sure what you like doing, is that you write down all the things that you do in a week, like all the courses and like writing papers, assisting to events, and then you start marking those who you felt that give you more energy. And that is how you start understanding, is it actually research? Like, do I like doing research, or do I like doing something else? And do I like interacting with people? And kind of like, it's a bit of a trick to help you, but don't feel so anxious about it. It's gonna be fine. And there's so many things, you still have one semester, you can participate in so many little activities. What I was saying, right? Think of those extracurricular, not because of putting on your CV, but just for you to meet people and understand how the world outside of school works.
Mm-hmm.
I may say just very quickly, because this is something that I reminded myself for so long, is that the professional career doesn't need to be linear. And sometimes we think that, like after uni, I'm supposed to work for the UN, and if I don't do it, I am a failure. And so so there are all these just false ideas that we have made somehow, or that we believe wrongly. So this is just an invitation also for you to think that you can do of your career whatever you want. So it is definitely not linear, and you can be as creative as possible.
Thank you so much, Ana Maria.
Sorry, I was just gonna add, there's a trend that's called portfolio career, where you build like different type of career within your own career. So it's becoming a trend.
So thank you, Charlotte. Thank you, Ana Maria, and thank you, Alessandra. It was a great pleasure to see you back. Thank you, Tiffany, for career services, and to Aline, who is also working with her. I want to thank a special thank to Pierre and Lucille, who are working with me and who made this roundtable possible. I was super happy to see that there is students, but there is also staff online interested in the topic. And so I wish you the very best for the end of the year. And I give you the floor back, Lucille. Thank you again for this organization.
Yeah, I just want to say one last thanks to our three panelists, first of all, for accepting to join us and for all the insightful comments you've made. Honestly, it's very reassuring as a student myself to hear all these things, that it's not linear and that things will happen at some point. But just, like attending events, attending courses, and finding out what I like, because I think yeah, that's how I see it, but it's nice to hear it from people who've been there before. So thank you so much for that. And thank you, Tiffany, for being here and for moderating the event. And thank you for Aline, who's not here. And thank you to Pierre, and thank you to Karen. Yeah. So
Thanks,
that
everyone.
was it. Thank you so much.
It was really inspiring to listen to you. Really, I feel inspired at least.
Thank you so much. For
Thank
the
you
Thank
so
you.
much. See you very soon.
Thank you.
Stay
Take good
safe.
care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.